The following program was provided by an independent producer solely responsible for its content. The opinions expressed do not necessarily represent the views of this station, its staff, board of directors, or underwriters.
Hello, I'm Carl Seidel, host of The People's View. The show is sponsored by the Nashua City Republican Committee, and if you like to attend our meetings, they're the second Thursday of every month at 6:30 at the Crown Plaza. And if you want to find out more about our organization, you can go to nashuagop.org to see our website and learn about the events that we have.
Welcome to The People's View.
Hello, and help me welcome Governor Jim Gillmore from Virginia. Jim, you're running in a big mess of people running for the Republican nomination, aren't you?
There are a lot of people, Carl.
Yeah.
Thank you for the chance to be with you tonight, though.
You're quite welcome. I'm glad you were able to be here. Tell us a little bit more about yourself, why you think you can stand out among this crowd of 17 or so candidates.
Well, you know, Carl, it's a big crowd that are running on the Republican side in this election, to be sure. But I think that the country is in need of new leadership, and in leadership that's experienced, that's somebody who has the right ideas, because the challenges are just so great. And I bring that to the table. I'm a former governor, a former attorney general, an elected prosecutor. I'm a person with deep background and experience in foreign policy issues. My degree is in foreign policy from the University in Russian Area Studies, University of Virginia. I am a United States Army veteran, United States Army intelligence, assigned to Germany during the Cold War. I chaired the National Commission on Homeland Security and Terrorism for the United States government for 5 years. I was the governor during the 9/11 attack. So Carl, I know what I think the challenges are that the nation is facing, and I am equipped and able to do something about it. And that's why I'm running for president.
Okay, well, I think with your governor experience and all these other things that you've been involved in, you're one of the ones that comes without the Washington, I don't know, aura, I guess. So what skills do you think you needed as governor that you would use as president?
Well, as governor, of course, you deal with the central issues that are facing a state. As governor, I dealt with the matter of saying that I was going to go into office and cut taxes in order to help people, and I kept my word, and I did what I said I was going to do. And I did eliminate or pay down the car tax, so the citizens didn't have to pay that tax on their private vehicles. On education, I said I'd put 4,000 new teachers into the classrooms, and I did that. When parents told me that tuitions were too high, we cut tuition 20% on our colleges and universities. We made the money back up to the colleges out of our budget, but we still managed to pass on that kind of savings to the parents who were trying to send their kids to college. These are the fundamental issues: mental health, public safety, the crisis of the 9/11 attack. These were the issues that I addressed as governor, and you put together budgets and you provide executive leadership, and that's what you have to have as president of the United States.
Were you Attorney General before you became governor of Virginia?
I was.
So you were a little bit familiar with the organization of Virginia, of the government. And did you have a team that you could put together pretty quickly?
I did. I managed to put together a cabinet very well. And you're right, I was the Attorney General for 4 years. In Virginia, you get one 4-year term for governor, and I served that 4 years previous to that as Attorney General of the state. And as Attorney General, naturally, you're running a very large legal office on behalf of the people. And we reorganized that. We reestablished the office in a new location. We made sure that things were professional and ran well. And I think I had that reputation as Attorney General of Virginia.
But you said everything ran well. So did you have to, I don't know, manipulate or change any of the organization of the government?
And as Attorney General, I reorganized that office entirely and set it up into different divisions, put new managers on top of it. But once again, the watchword there was, don't you worry about the politics. I'm an elected Attorney General. I can deal with that. You just be professionals. And as a result, the bipartisan staff that was there in the Attorney General's office did very, very well. As governor, that was established. But there, the goal was to push things forward within a very short time, because you only have a 4-year term as governor. So my goal there was to keep my word and to cut that tax, and to make sure that we delivered that value back to people, and deliver the issues of good education and quality of standard of living to the people of the state.
Did you have the majority of the people in your legislature?
No, as a matter of fact, while I was governor, I was concerned that we had only had one-party government in Virginia forever, and that party was the Democratic Party. This is the old Solid South. And, I dedicated myself to bringing a Republican majority into the House and the Senate for the first time in history, so that we could begin to actually bring some balance back into government and some sense of responsibility and accountability to the people. And I did that over that 4-year period. I actually established the first Republican majorities in the history of Virginia.
So you were able to deal with both sides too, then, I imagine. You worked cooperatively with them?
Well, yes, but don't make any mistake about it. Partisanship is partisanship.
Yeah.
And it is true that we had an agenda that for the Republican Party that did require some really tough leadership and some tough decision making. But the tax cut was bipartisan. The Democrats understood that I came in on that tax cut proposal, and they cooperated with me in enacting it.
I see. So you think then you'd be able to do this very similar thing with the federal government, or is that going to be a little bit more tough?
Well, of course it'll be hard. We know the controversies that are in the United States Congress right now, but I'm familiar with that. I know what that's all about, and I know the challenges that are ahead. But the main point, I guess, that I would make to your viewers, Carl, is this. I think I know the challenges that face the United States. For that matter, I know the challenges that face the people of New Hampshire, too. And people are telling me that they have anxiety about their jobs and their work. They're concerned that they're not going to be able to keep their jobs, that older workers are afraid they're going to lose their jobs and get laid off and not be able to find something else. People in New Hampshire are telling me that they're really concerned that their children are not getting a good start in life, that they don't have a career opportunity in New Hampshire. Mothers and fathers want their kids to establish themselves in their home state and establish and keep their families together and nearby, and they can't. The kids are having to go elsewhere to start a career. They don't like that. People are working part-time that want to work full-time. Wages are flat. These are issues in New Hampshire. But Carl, it's the same things that I hear across the United States of America. And I know what to do. I know what we have to do. I know we have to dedicate ourselves to rebuilding the United States economy. Oh yeah, people will tell you in Washington that the unemployment rate is down, but what I hear from people is different. I hear that they're feeling insecure and under economic stress. I know what to do. We have a tax cut plan that we can put into place to grow the economy. We know that there are laws that have been put into place to discourage investment and growth of new businesses. We know that the country, the state of New Hampshire too, is overregulated from the Environmental Protection Agency, from the Department of Education. We know these things. We know that Dodd-Frank is crushing community banks. We know what to do I know what to do to make things better and to address this concern of the people of New Hampshire and the United States.
There's a lot of things that you just said, but where do you start?
Well, I think you start by putting together the right kind of program. When I become the president, the first thing I'm going to do is bring in the leadership of both parties and say, listen, we have to actually recover from the Great Recession that we had. We are really in a very slow growth area in the United States now. And we're not growing anywhere near, Carl, the speed that we need to. That's why wages are flat in the United States. That's why wages are flat in New Hampshire. And we have to have a program to grow it. So that's the first thing that I would do. But I also want to mention that there are great dangers to the United States right now on the international scene and in foreign policy. And I have the experience to address that frankly, the other Republican candidates just don't have. And I think I can make a difference in the safety and security of this country, projecting our values and making sure that we're not put into danger with the international challenges we face.
You anticipated my next question, because there is a lot of problems outside of the United States that influence what we do here. What would you do with the defense of the United States to keep the terrorists out and keep foreign relations, improving them?
And as I said, I chaired the National Commission on Terrorism and Homeland Security for the United States for 5 years. And of course, I was governor during the 9/11 attack. It was very ironic because we've been addressing these terrorism issues for 3 years and they've been ignored by the Congress. And yet then the attack occurred, and I had the responsibility of responding to that. Because, Carl, the first state attacked at 9/11 was New York. The second state that was attacked was Virginia. Yeah, and people say Washington, they think of Washington, but the truth is it was Virginia, because the Pentagon is in Virginia. And the response was done by Virginia. The economic effect was in Virginia, and those were my responsibilities. But you ask a question. Yes, we're weaker than we should be. The philosophy of this president has been to pull back and to draw back and not spend sufficient money on the defense of this nation. Firstly, we're going to have strong, decisive presidential leadership when I become the president. We're not going to be projecting weakness, which encourages our adversaries. Second, we're going to take the sequester lid off of the defense budget and begin to spend an appropriate amount of money to rebuild the Army and to rebuild surface vessels, and to make sure that our Navy is in a position to do what is necessary to protect the American interests across the world. We're going to rebuild the Marine Corps. We're going to add people into the United States Army. I know these things from my experience as a United States Army veteran of actually serving our country overseas. And I think we're going to address this problem of the Middle East deterioration that we're seeing, which is causing a threat to this country. These things I know from my working experience.
Well, we have a lot of things to, you think the present administration is sort of showing weakness, because it seems to me that our so-called enemies are taking advantage, little here, little there, just trying to play and see how we'd react to some of these things, and we're not reacting very well.
Well, I think there are people that do not like the civilized Western order that we're living in today, and America's the guardian of that civilized order. So we see the emergence of things like ISIS out there that's cutting people's heads off and enslaving women and abusing people and committing murders. We see an Iran at this point that is pushing forward and is trying to get a nuclear bomb, and we have an agreement that I'm afraid that enables that somewhere up the road. The Russians, who are actually very aggressive right now, and just to complicate things further, have injected themselves now into Syria. The Chinese that are with the South China Sea. These are the dangers that we're seeing right now because we're projecting that America's day is over and that we're pulling back. I say that it's not. We don't want to be in the old neocon fashion of invading everybody and trying to control countries, but we don't want to be in the isolationist mode either, where we pull back. That is the surest path to war. I believe that we have to have a policy of peace through strength. That means we have to dedicate more finances to and money to rebuilding the United States military.
Is there other areas that you could save money in? You see the government, expanding in areas it doesn't have to be in. And maybe some have suggested that we do away with certain departments and perhaps just feed the money back to the states to take care of those problems.
Well, I'm certainly not going to tell your viewers that I think that's an automatic thing. It's easier to do. I really don't want to be a demagogue on this. But I do think this. The Department of Education in Washington is really almost a grant program. It's using taxpayer money in order to try to manipulate and direct education in the states. My experience is that that's not right. And we might be able to save that money and deploy that money elsewhere to federal types of policies. My experience is that education is best resolved with the localities and the families that are working together in order to really observe what is necessary for their local curriculums, supported by the state. When I was the governor of Virginia, I said I would put 4,000 new teachers into the public schools in order to reduce class sizes, and I kept that promise, and I did that. But I think that Common Core type of thinking out of the Department of Education has no place in New Hampshire, has no place in America, in my view. So that money might be saved. And it could be that there are some other places across the government that we could save some money. But the most important point right now, Carl, is this. Our policy must be to control the growth of spending, to not allow it to get out of control, which is very hard when you're dealing with legislatures. And then to grow the economy up. Control the spending, grow the economy, and create some additional wealth gap there, which then can be deployed for the reduction of the debt and for the expenditure of the appropriate money for the national security of this country.
Well, that sounds like a lot of good things. What about, how would you handle the immigration problem? where we're not really controlling that, and where we're also accepting a lot of people from the Mideast area that has all the trouble. And we worry not only about the quantity of people, but the quality of the people that are coming in. Are some of them drug smugglers? Are some of them terrorists even?
Well, and in a moment, I also want to speak about the growth of the heroin problem we're
Right.
seeing, not only in New Hampshire, but across the United States as well. But your immigration issue is certainly an active and controversial area. And I've said that I don't think that the United States really needs to be taking refugees from the Middle East, and when we don't have our economy in shape. We don't really have the excess jobs at this point to bring in new people and give them a fair chance until we grow the economy. I don't want to be not a humanitarian, but I just don't, I think we're putting the cart before the horse there. It'd be better to get our own immigration and our economy in shape, and really to deal with the stability of the Middle East instead of trying to take in people from across the world in this crisis type of situation. Now, the immigration issue is, I think, as follows. First of all, I think Donald Trump is wrong when he says that we're going to take 12 million people that are here now and just put them on buses and trains and ship them out. I don't think that's, not only is it not realistic, it's a dreadful message to send to our people who are working here in this country and trying to live in our community. I am not in favor of open borders, and I am not in favor of an amnesty. I think people who are here ought to be registered. I think they ought to be given a work permit, but they can't have a path to citizenship if they have come to this country illegally. But I will say this, Donald Trump has also said he thinks that we should begin to tinker with birthright citizenship, and I believe that's a violation of the 14th Amendment. I think young kids that are born in this country are American citizens. I am not in favor of the abuse of coming to this country and having a child just to get citizenship. But I think we send a terrible message to the Latino community when we say to them somehow their children are not worthy. But we should control the borders. We should eliminate sanctuary cities. We should vigorously prosecute any person that's not a citizen of this country who's committing crimes. And we should be having a policy that says that anybody that henceforth that comes to this country illegally shall be deported. So I believe that position that I've just laid out to you is the best possible reasonable solution to get to the bottom of this problem.
Are you familiar with the ICE programs and the division of the government that handles those immigration things? Because one of the problems I've seen, and nobody's really mentioned, why does it take so long for the people that come in legally to get their citizenship? Some of it's 10, 15 years to go through that process.
And as governor, I actually have attended more than one of the swearing-in ceremonies. As a matter of fact, I still remember doing one at Monticello at Jefferson's home.
That's an appropriate place.
It is. I think that your question goes to this. I think that we're seeing a frustration today in the United States that they don't think their government is working efficiently, that there seems to be nobody really at the helm running the government. So, we need to run these things so that if a person is applying legally and they can add to the quality of life of this country as a citizen, that they are given citizenship efficiently and faster and appropriately. The same thing that we're seeing right now when people tell us that we're not seeing other aspects of the federal government operating right, like the Veterans Administration. New Hampshire is a place with a lot of veterans and a lot of veteran concerns. I hear it all the time when I'm out on the campaign trail, and I hear it in other parts of the United States as well. It's pretty clear that the Veterans Administration has not been operated appropriately. People are now taking the Fifth Amendment. People's records have been allegedly destroyed. People who are veterans can't get hospital care because they can't get these things efficiently done. 307,000 veterans died in the United States waiting for medical care. So there's got to be a president who is hands-on and understands how to actually make the government run and be responsive to the concerns of the people.
Well, it's not only that group. You got the IRS there. You have the Homeland Security. All the problems that are coming up. You sure you want to try for the presidency?
Well, look, you don't spend a lifetime of service.
Yeah.
At the state level and important federal commissions that I was asked to chair as a United States Army veteran, a lifetime of something that could actually help your fellow Americans. And then when we end up with an international crisis and an opposition party that wants to become more socialist, for heaven's sake. They say that. Then I think this is the time when you step up. You don't go home and sit and watch your country go down. You step up and try to provide the leadership you know you can provide in order to help the people of this country.
Well, good. I don't know where you start. That's the problem. you got a lot of things that are really messed up down there, and it seems that your background will help you. And how do you like to make yourself stand out from the crowd? I mean, what do you think you might offer, or people should consider when they look for voting for their candidate?
I get asked that, Carl, quite a bit, even this very day, as a matter of fact, as I've been out in the country and of course in the state of New Hampshire also, and you get asked that question. Here's the answer. Sure, as a former governor and attorney general, I bring, and all the work that I've done, I bring to the table a great deal of management and governmental experience. But I also bring the foreign policy experience that the other candidates just simply don't have. The National Commission, the United States Army veteran, the other things that I bring to the table. There are only 2 veterans in this race. And I'm the one that actually was deployed overseas on behalf of this country in Europe during the Cold War. These things stand out. But you know what? I've thought about it. I'm not sure that's really the correct answer, really. I think the correct answer is that I am attuned to the concerns of the people that are looking for someone to administer their government in a way to address those challenges. And what are those challenges, at least in New Hampshire, and frankly across the country as well? Insecurity about the jobs, flat wages, a sense that their children don't have a better life ahead of them than they had. The real, genuine concern that the international relations of this country are deteriorating and the country is under threat, something that I understand very well as the governor that handled the 9/11 attack. A sense that the heroin epidemic is really destroying people. And Carl, I believe that you need to have some treatment for people who have been on drugs, that have gotten on drugs, because it's really out of their control at that point. But I believe, as a former prosecutor and attorney general, that we have to be harsher on people who sell narcotic drugs and destroying people who are making money on the destruction of their fellow human beings. The destruction, the enslavement of women through narcotics, the destruction and death of people who overdose and die. We now have more overdoses in the United States than we have traffic fatalities. Now, that means that we have a serious problem that must be addressed, and I believe we have to be much stronger against drug trafficking in this country.
Well, how do you get some of the foreign countries where the drugs are coming from to cooperate with us in this program of getting rid of that?
Well, first of all, I think you can. I think that we can use American economic power if we are, and sometimes military power, but mostly economic power and the power of the United States economy and our role in the world and our influence in the world to get cooperation. But in a way, I think that maybe that it's time for national leadership to begin to say drug use is wrong and dangerous, and this is what will happen to you. If you notice that the country is moving in the opposite direction, we're legalizing marijuana. The President of the United States just gave an early release to drug dealers. We're sending the opposite message of where we have to go. The result will be that we will lose more children to drugs. We will lose people to this heroin epidemic. And we will destroy people. And after a while, the citizens of this country are going to stand up and demand that we move in the right direction. I intend to be the president that says, I'm going to take us in the right direction. I'm going to save your children from the scourge of heroin addiction.
What would you, as president, stop the use of marijuana in some of these states? Because it's really not a state decision. It's a
state decision, not a federal decision.
Yeah. Well, what about the fact that it's an illegal drug from the national standpoint?
Absolutely, and I would keep it that way. And I would also say that if a state wants to legalize it, that's what they get to do. That's what they get to do under our federal system. But I'm not, as president, going to say it's a good thing.
Okay.
And I'm going to speak out and say that I believe states that after they have had the dreadful experience for a while, they ought to reverse themselves and let's get back on the right track again. And talk about this. I think we have to talk to the American people about the prospects of the future, not about recreational drugs and narcotics, and trying to say that somehow that this is an appropriate direction to go.
Well, and one of the things you've probably seen here in New Hampshire is the drug courts that you were talking about handling some of these users in a more compassionate way maybe, but more of a corrective way, and to build mental health or whatever kind of psychological help they needed to kick the habit. Did you have this in Virginia, or do you think this is something that should be used in the states, all the states?
We do understand that people are often brought in for illegal use. And if they're into a heroin addiction, Carl, that is very serious. At that point, a person's on a downhill slide to death. So I understand that the role of treatment. In fact, it was just this past week that my local sheriff in Virginia invited me to go over and visit his drug rehabilitation program that he conducts through his county jail. And I sat and I talked to people who had been addicted, and they explained to me their lifestyle and the way that they got into their position. Many people start this kind of thing through prescription drugs, where they get into a painful situation because of an injury, they get onto a painkiller, and then all of a sudden you begin to move forward in that. And then ultimately they tell me that, well, they can't any longer get the kind of high that they want under pain prescription. They can't get it anymore because the doc stopped giving it to them. So then they go back out on the street and they buy heroin, which I'm shocked to say is cheap. And that's the problem that we're in right now. So I think that it's almost explaining to people, an education process, where we say to people, this is going to kill you. And it's going to destroy your parents, it's going to destroy your children, this is going to kill you. And furthermore, it's going to take everything that you have or could ever get, or anything you can steal. It's going to take it and destroy you. And we have to make that point. I haven't seen very much discussion of that in the last 10 or 15 years. As a result, you have an epidemic now.
You think we have to get it back into the schools where that's part of their curriculum?
Yes, I do. I think that we ought to be talking about that in the public schools. I think we ought to be talking that to all the schools and stating some standard of the society. I believe the churches can play a very significant role in this.
Definitely.
And talk about the morality and the propriety of what's good and bad. But it's not just from a religious basis alone, it's from the basis of the practical reality of the destruction of people by these narcotics. The people in New Hampshire are very worried about heroin. When I first arrived in New Hampshire last year and began to visit important officials, I saw Mayor Gatzis in Manchester. And I said, after the long visit, I said, well, Mr. Mayor, tell me what you think the #1 issue is in New Hampshire. You know what he said? Heroin. I was really very surprised. I thought he was going to say budgets and jobs, and he said heroin.
Yeah, that's really trouble. It's here in Nashua, it's becoming the same way. But that's one of the things that they always say cities have as a problem. But we've run out of time now. That's our problem right now. But I really enjoyed talking to you. Good luck in your continued campaign for the nomination. It's going to be a tough run, but I think you have a lot to offer.
Thank you, Carl.
Thank you for coming on. And thank you for listening in. And don't forget that the Nashua City Republican Committee meets every second Thursday of the month at the Crown Plaza.
The preceding program was provided by an independent producer solely responsible for its content. The opinions expressed do not necessarily represent the views of this station, its staff, board of directors, or underwriters.